It had almost been a year since Ali could see properly. Yes, he had glasses. They were big, clunky things with brown plastic frames and thick, scratch lenses that had once probably belonged to a nearly blind old man with horrible taste. And to top it all off, now the lenses were broken. A crack down each one that made the edges of everything blur together, or perhaps it was just the world that was one big, unfocused mess, and his glasses had nothing to do with it at all. His mother had bought the glasses for him from a street vendor, an old woman with a hunch like a balloon on her backside, a woman who probably stole things or found them in the garbage or on the ground and would resell them, walking up and down the narrow street Ali and his family called home, shouting, "Bazar Khanum, Lady Bazar," belting it out like a rooster each morning. Ali's mother had died less than a year ago when Ali was only 9 years old, and they couldn't figure out why because instead of going to see the doctor, she'd use what little money she'd saved from her seamstress work to buy Ali those glasses and to replace the old lenses with proper ones. "It's important to see, my boy. If you can't see, then how will you find all the beautiful things of this world?" had been her constant reassurance when Ali had insisted that they didn't have the money for such things. Even at the age of 9, he was quite aware of the turmoil of his surroundings. "She got sick of you," his father had said when Ali's mother stopped breathing one day. Her arms and legs had swollen and there was something elephant-like about her. Ali thought then, something that made him believe she'd wake up soon and he could ride on her back all the way out of this suffocating alley, far away from Iran and this shitty excuse for a life. The only thing beside her was a worn-down Walkman she had bought off of Lady Bazaar years ago, when there had been a little more money. Inside, Ali knew, was the one tape she listened to over and over again, this one Whitney Houston. "She got sick of her pesky little boy and she asked God to take her away," his father had continued, Ali's eyes transfixed on that thing. He believed he'd open it and the tape would be gone too, as if his mother's soul had vanished with it. Ali was no idiot. He knew his mother loved him more than anything in this world, mostly because she told him this each and every day, and if anything, it had been his drunken, gambling father she'd lost her patience with. Ali stood there for a long time in the room the three of them shared, with a single cobweb window and only a flimsy mattress flopped down on the floor like a lifeboat in shambles. He hovered above his elephant mother, twisting his thumbs together and praying to some god, any god, she'd wake up again and not leave him alone with this man who he could hear in the middle of the night touching and groping at his mother even when she refused it. The anger welled up inside Ali on those nights, but he never did much about it. His father had stuffed his clothes inside a raggedy bag, shoving all the food they had left, every last grain of rice, with a greedy, drunken grin smeared on his face. When he was done, he came and stood next to Ali, who'd taken his glasses off and was wiping the lenses with the bottom of his shirt. If these were the last moments he'd be seeing his mother, he wanted to make sure he had a good view. And was she not a beautiful thing? Was she not the most beautiful thing of all? His hands were small, and even though he'd grown tall over the past few years, they'd remained minuscule, as if resisting the natural order of life. The glasses dropped from his infant-like hand suddenly, falling to the floor near his father's foot. His father was wearing the only pair of shoes he owned, boots with a pointed tip and a thick heel. He looked down, and before Ali could lower himself, his father lifted that boot up and stomped hard, as if doing a passionate Kurdish dance on those glasses. "She could have seen the doctor if she hadn't bought these stupid things for you," he said. "Inshallah, one day you'll go blind." And he left his son alone for good. But this is not going to be one of those stories. Yes, his mother was dead and his father was an alcoholic and a coward and had left. And yes, Ali couldn't see straight now. But if his mother had taught him anything at all, was that we must find the joy even when things look dismal. And for Ali, that joy would eventually arrive in the unlikeliest of forms, thievery. Even in their darkest times, his mother had always insisted that stealing was wrong. You take what's not yours and everything after that will be chaos. It will come back to you, my boy. The joy will be quick and the sorrow an eternity. It was a sin, but it was quite possible that the woman had never stolen a thing in her life before, because the truth was, there was no feeling like it in this world, and surely if she knew what it felt like, she wouldn't have believed that at all. For the most part, it wasn't the object Ali craved. Sure, he could use a stick of gum or a few extra tomans to buy himself a proper meal, but the actual thing was an afterthought for the young boy. The rush of stealing made Ali's blood bubble, and that moment where the possibility of getting caught made the air around him feel silent and plump with possibility was when he felt most alive. He'd leave the alley he called home now in the south of Tehran early in the morning and make his way up north, sneaking on the backs of trucks, charming his way onto motorcycles, into free taxi rides because most who lived in the south had thin wallets. Women didn't carry purses and never wore jewelry besides a dull gold and didn't really own anything valuable, let alone keep such things on them. When he made it to North Tehran, even though everything looked shattered through his glasses, clarity washed over Ali. Like a kleptomaniac ninja, the young boy was able to fully focus on his prey and tune the traffic and the impatient car horns and the driver's curses, the haggling of men and women, the constant bleeps and dings of cell phones, the cheesy music on display, the gossip and chatter of aimless women, the beggars who rattled their tin cans with the sound of 1 or 2 coins. He was able to tune this world out for a few moments. But today would be different. Today he was hungry, not the hunger of skipping a meal or even 2, but that hunger that feels nuclear and permanent and impossible to satiate. Today he missed his mother more than usual, the way she could take a small pouch of rice, the leftover pieces of meat the butcher kindly saved for her each week, some withering herbs and spices, and somehow make Ali what had always felt like a feast. Today, he obsessively listened to that Whitney Houston tape and couldn't get his mother out of his mind. Today, Ali sat in Parque Lale, as he did most afternoons, when people scurried into cafes for lunch or went home to eat and then to take long naps, and he saw the old man he usually saw, who'd always bring a basket and sit alone on his designated bench as if it was perfectly normal, and eat every last morsel of food he'd bring all by himself. The man was old, most likely someone's grandfather or maybe even a great-grandfather. Ali had never known such things in his life. All of his grandparents had died young from various illnesses that could have been prevented had they had the money to seek out proper treatment. He'd never known a single old person in his life except Bazar Khanum, whose hunchback and bloated hands had always scared him. He'd always thought of them as miserable, pesky beings weighed down by life with nothing to contribute to the world besides their complaints and woes. This is at least what he gathered by those he came across on the streets, old men nagging at their wives that it was too hot or that they needed to stop and take a rest because their backs were acting up again. This old man was different, though. He was dressed sharply, a suit that fit him well and a cap over his thick silver hair. He looked fit and sat up straight, a sign of a sturdy spine if Ali had ever seen one. Every movement was done with great thought and elegance, with hands that looked manicured, and Ali believed that the man must have been a part of the royal family long ago. He wore glasses, too, with spotless lenses, and Ali wasn't sure if it was more reasonable to feel jealous over the man's thick hunk of cheese, bread and herb sandwich with the tomatoes he ate whole and the fresh figs he nibbled on after, and the tea he'd brought for himself in a thermos, or over the black-rimmed glasses the old man could see so perfectly out of. But this was the strange thing, Ali thought, that even though the man looked to be enjoying his food, there was something also lonely about him, something frightened and weak that reminded Ali that yes, in fact, this man was old and that no money in the world could take away this look on his face. But instead of turning away from it as he often did, Ali somehow felt pulled towards them, as if they came from the same tribe of lonely boys and men and had somehow been separated from each other, only to find each other once again in this park, on these benches, one with food and one without, but both nonetheless lonely. And for a moment, Ali felt as if this old man and him were experiencing the same exact feeling. How it was possible to be surrounded by more than 7 million people in a city, but to feel so utterly and completely alone, as if you had mistakenly been placed here by God as some cruel trick. Ali had thought for a moment of crossing that line, of simply approaching the old man and telling him how much his stomach churned and how his mother had died and what his father had done and the whole story about the glasses, and just asking him for a bit of his food. A small sandwich, just one fig. I'll even keep you company, Ali would say. We're from the same tribe, don't you remember? But a kid Ali recognized came up to the man to sell him a pack of gum, and the old man's eyebrows furrowed, and he flicked his hand, almost smacking the kid, and shooed him away like a pesky fly. Get lost, he barked. Leave me alone. In a grumpy voice that didn't surprise Ali at all. And it was then that he decided that he'd need a partner for this mission, someone good enough to win over this old man's heart, distract him while Ali stole his basket of food. Thank you.
Woo!